Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. Wednesday Wisdom is sponsored by K-12 Sports Tech. So we're going to hear from them and our regular sponsors. So don't hit that fast forward button. These are all companies that I used as an athletic director. I trust them. You should trust them too. So let's listen to our shout outs, take about 3 minutes, then listen to our Wednesday Wisdom guest, and then go visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to thank K-12 Sports Tech for sponsoring Wednesday Wisdom. K-12 Sports Tech actually helps athletic directors and sports vendors connect through education and hands-on consulting. Athletic directors are also invited to join the K-12 Sports Tech AD think tank and help influence how companies actually shape their tech to better serve schools. For more information or to get signed up, go to k12sportstech.com. That's it, k12sportstech.com. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that let them coach our kids up to the next level. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, turn your school into a Huddle school. We want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the events, or show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Take a look at their interactive touch screen video consoles. They're also a great way to tell your school's unique history and brag about your proudest moments. The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check them out today. We want to thank Home Campus for their support. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, uploading scores and rosters, communicating with your stakeholders, communicating with your state. How about student athlete eligibility and clearance? Who doesn't do that every single day? Home Campus does all of these things. It does them better and it does them faster. And you need to have Home Campus working for you. To get started, just go to homecampus.com. That's homecampus.com. We also want to say thanks to the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration. This is an affordable 20-month, completely online program where you earn your master's while also earning 11 NIAAA leadership training courses to go towards your CAA. To get started, all you have to do is go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Online Masters. We'd like to thank Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Check out their products today. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and then been disappointed with the return on investment? No more. Go to snapraise.com. It's hands down the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with tremendous success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it. It works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it. Go to snapraise.com. We want to say thank you to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. I don't think I need to say anything more. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more. We want to say thanks to Gipper. Your students are on social media, and if you're not creating content to celebrate their accomplishments and promote your program, you're really missing out on a great opportunity. Go to Gipper.com. Their team is going to have you creating world-class content in seconds, and it's so easy, even I can do it. game day posts, player of the week, score updates, schedules, their new newsletter feature. You'll find it all at Gipper.com. Check them out today. And we want to say thank you to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. You know, athletic directors already get feedback, but usually it's from a very small group and they only want to gripe about stuff. Athletic surveys will connect you to that small group, but they're also going to connect you to the 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. And collecting that data is incredibly valuable, especially when you're sitting down with a frustrated parent, or maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another segment of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. We've got one of our most prolific presenters. She's been on this show. I don't know if she's number one, but I think she's probably number two for segments. Our guest today, longtime listeners will recognize the name Jennifer Siess. If you're new to the show, Jen was tremendous background in athletics as a college athlete, as a coach. She has her own mental performance training program that she works with individuals and teams and coaches. She was in broadcasting, got out of it, but now she's back in as one of the booth analysts for the St. Louis City professional soccer team. And if that wasn't enough, she's the host of her own very popular podcast, Soccer Mom Sundays. We're glad that she took a little bit of a break to join us again. Jen Siess, welcome back to Wednesday Wisdom.
Thanks for having me. It's been a little bit longer than I should have had, but I appreciate the rescheduling, and I always love being on, and I love listening to all the other Wednesday Wisdoms with the fantastic guests you have on.
Oh, well, I know it's incredibly busy for our listeners. We're recording this on July 10th, so it's going to be pretty timely when you listen to it. Jen, you and I, before we started recording, I think we talked for about 30 minutes or so, but what do you have for our listeners on this segment of Wednesday Wisdom?
Yeah, I was thinking about some themes that tend to come up at the time. There's always timely. When you ask me, it's like, oh, I pay attention to some themes coming up. And I thought it might be nice to talk about when I'm thinking about athletic directors and coaches that are males and females, but largely, I would say we could all agree that it's largely still male dominated. Um, watching for the default and being intentional. And here are my examples for that. Two of them that kind of come up lately for listeners, and I'm sure we have other stories, but Andy Murray, professional tennis player, famous. He's going around the circuits, of course, with the explosion of women's sports, which is, for people who are my age, Jake, I'm 50, so I'm not a new kid on the block, but women my age are like, we told you so. But as we see the rise in women's sports that everybody's been working for since before in the dawn of Title IX, you're starting to have more conversations. And a lot of these conversations are pushed forward, not only by the women who are talking about it, we've been talking about it for years, but our male allies, right? Our men who are allies, boys who are allies to girls. And when I say that, Andy Murray is one of them. And there's several reels going around, but when Andy talks, right, when he's talked about by press conference, media people, they will often default, usually they're males, they're men who are asking the question, but saying, hey, you're the first to win this, or you will be the first to win that. And he'll say men's on the men's side. That could be true on the men's side because like Serena and Venus have already done it 3 times. Pep Guardiola and my sport of choice, soccer or football for the rest of the world. Pep Guardiola, head coach of Manchester City. I believe this reel is a little bit older than currently, but it is making the way around social media very quickly. And one of the press conference media people asked him, you will be the first to win the domestic treble, winning 3 competitions right at one time. And he said, men's. And he said it again. He said, we would be the first on the men's side. The women, they have already done it. The English women have already done it. So, and it's making its way around. And I think it's really important because as human beings, I'm not saying this to call people out. I'm saying this to just make us notice that we all have default speak. I do. I certainly do. I grew up with certain kinds of speak, and Now I choose to speak differently. And when I do, sometimes I have to do it with intention. You've had on, Jake, Jen Brooks, AD here in St. Louis, who made me think about something I had never thought about before. When she's often in a group with of generally guys, right? The common term to say is guys, hey guys, hey guys. Guys typically refers to men, although women have adopted it, and I use it all the time. So much so that I've started now to change my speak in the media. So instead of asking the coach about how do you think the guys performed, I will say, how do you think your players performed? Make it, make it very more, inclusive, because on if I was talking to a female, a coach of a female team, I wouldn't say, how do you think your guys performed? More than likely. So I just think it's, whenever we are doing something, human beings default to the middle, right? We default to comfort. We default to, this is how we always did it, kind of a deal. And when we, just like a habit, when we want to make a change, we have to be intentional with it. And I think some of the best changes for me, I have always felt not only validated by the women speaking up about it, but our male allies saying, hey, there are other, ways to think about this, and it's not easy, and it's also not always done with malintent. It's just done because we're used to speaking a certain way. And I thought it would be cool if you would share your story from I think you said ESPN, right? Because I didn't know of this at all.
Right. Well, again, you're absolutely right on what you say, what you've just shared, and you made me think of a second story that I'm going to lead with first. Years and years ago, and I'm saying years ago, I was with I grew up in Oregon and Washington, West Coast, and I was in Texas. I was in my early 20s, and a group of folks, men and women, and uh, uh, at some point I said, hey, do you guys want to go to XYZ? And this woman, who was part of our group, she looks at me and she goes, we're not guys, we're y'all. And of course, in Texas and in the South, that's default. I've even living in Florida now for 20 years. Y'all comes out of my mouth very easily, but it was a great point that, guys is, and in the Northwest, guys is guys. Okay. But in Texas, obviously, hey, we're y'all. Now, here's the story I shared with you. This was I want to say 2 days ago. One of my favorite shows to watch in the afternoon is on ESPN. It's called Around the Horn. If you're not familiar with it, there's a rotating group of four reporters, if you will, very diverse men, women, people of color. And then there's a host, and they talk about the subjects of the day. At the end of the broadcast, and this is, I'm going to say the host is probably, well, he's much closer to your age than me. I'm much older than you, but he's saying, and blah blah blah, the WNBA. This was the first time it happened in the WNBA or something like that. It was WNBA, and without missing a beat, the host, Tony Reale, I'll give him his props, says, and I don't know if they've ever done it in the MNBA. And I knew exactly what he was talking about, but I had never heard that expression, but it made perfect sense. The
Yeah,
WNBA is certainly, it's been here for 20 plus years. And,
right,
obviously it's going through some explosion, but it's here. And so why
right.
not refer to, the MNBA by that title?
Yeah.
Wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and it's props, right? It's props, and it's totally inclusive. That is exactly what he's doing. Is he being inclusive? Um, I can call out. There's a high school here, and there's more than one, right? So yeah, high school in here that in St. Louis that I've worked with actually on the mindset part, and I mistagged sharing that on social media because they have a hashtag called WAOS, which is We Are Oakville Soccer, and I thought, oh, that's a great tag. That's the boys team. So and I've called them out for it. I'm like, by the way, you're not only, so the girls had to get a completely different one, whereas my alma mater in college, Lindenwood, which is also here in St. Louis, has changed their handles. Lindenwood W Soccer, Lindenwood M Soccer. SLU has done it here too, and I think it's just, changes are. irritating sometimes. It's hard to sometimes do and be like, "Ah, I gotta change this sound." But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth the irritation. I think it's worth the effort to make sure and you kind of have this inclusivity built in by saying we are not one. And I say this as a Lindenwood Lady Lion because when I played at Lindenwood, the Lions, right? So Lions is the mascot. It was either Lindenwood Lions, which is the men's team, or Lindenwood Lady Lions. And we did not like that. We're like, we're all Lions. And then I gave up after arguing with sorry, it was a football player who tried to explain that Lions were boys. And I said, but actually, they're both. But the default,
Which lion does the hunting though? It's the female. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. But it's really, I think when it comes to women in the workplace, I'm a mother of four, right? I've been inside corporate environments, I've been outside corporate environments, and I'm getting back into a completely different environment. That inclusivity is really what everybody's looking for. And so, props to, I'll call it another great name here. If you have any St. Louis listeners, potentially national listeners for soccer, Ty Keogh is one of the most known names. St. Louisan, Harry Keogh is his dad, big soccer. Ty played for the U.S. men's national team. He's a broadcaster. Gave me some great advice one time. Tell me, Jen, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Ty's a great personality. And we just did an interview on the national teams going to the Olympics. And in that interview, I was super appreciative. I didn't say it to him, but I was appreciative of every time he would default to talking about the national team, he would correct himself and say either, right, the men's or the women's. And I can hear that and I can appreciate the fact that there was a time, I'm sure, where Ty talked about the national team. And of course, it was the men's team. There was a time where we didn't have a women's national team. And now I really appreciate, and this is a gentleman who is quite a bit older than I. We say that it's hard to change your habits as you get older. I agree. I super appreciate that from him. And I had my kids listen to the raw version of the interview before I had to edit some of it down to say, I want you to listen intentionally, like how he's trying to make this change to be inclusive and how from my heart, I appreciate that as being a female athlete.
No, again, a great illustration of I don't think we, let's say men, have done that for years out of any sort of disrespect. It was just
No, agreed.
that's what we were doing. But now, okay, it's been pointed out to you that this is what we should do. So if you don't change, now you're just being an a-hole,
Ah,
and not, giving, the individual women, the teams, the coaches, the organizations, the props that they're due.
yeah, and I think we already do it, right? So if you ever you have somebody, a friend who goes on and gets their doctorate degree, right? And so they are the first because they are very proud of the hard work that they earned to not either be Mr. or Ms., but they are like, I am doctor. In the military, I have a friend who's a jarhead. He's a Marine, and he kind of backed me up and said, "Oh, it's big in the military. You change rank, um, people better figure that out real quick. Like you correct them once, and you're expected to only correct them once." So we do this all the time when we change names or change titles or things happen. And sometimes we step and we misspeak and and you get corrected or you correct yourself. So I don't, again, to your point, it's usually largely never a malintent. It just comes from we're creatures of habit. But I do believe that the next steps for all of us, whether you're sitting around in a coaches meeting or you're sitting around in your athletic director meeting, no matter, even if women aren't present at the table, to change that. We have our local high school, Kirkwood High School. I love it. We have a couple of guys who run the athletic department and they're football players, right? And so they send out great weekly kind of updates and they will always give when the football games are. Well, for the rest of us, I don't have a football player in my family. We're soccer players, baseball players, wrestler. We kind of called out in a nice way and said, hey, if you're going to call those out, could you call out the games of the rest of the sports too? Because softball play is playing at the same time. Boys soccer in Missouri is playing at the same time. There's other sports, cross country is playing, doing at the same time. And, he said, I'm so sorry. I just didn't even think of it. He's a football guy, right? And Friday night lights are a big deal here. Jake, you and I went to dinner once and we could hear, right, the loudness from the stadium. My soccer playing daughter loves going to those games. But right, if we're going to make, as athletic directors and coaches, the rest of the sports feel welcome, we have to include them. So that's why I thought maybe default would be good to talk about, because we all do it. And the way you get out of that is just like a habit. You have to set intention and see where else can we have inclusive speak or bring in inclusivity. Jake, you do it on the Wednesday Wisdom. You have women on the podcast talking about a different perspective. And it's not like you haven't had them on other parts of your podcasts, but this is a very intentional effort that you have women voices come in. And I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. We certainly appreciate your contributions, as and all the members of our Wednesday Wisdom team. Um, these are supposed to be shorter segments, and again, you've been great. I would love to have you go into your mental performance training and the things that you do with Soccer Mom Sundays, but we don't have time right now. But I
Save it
do
for next
want you
time.
to tell our listeners how they can find out more. Listeners, you've got a great resource here. If you're looking to do something with your team, with your program, your coaches, your parents, in that area of mental performance. If you're just looking for a great speaker, you should reach out to Jen. Her experience and background currently in broadcasting, she would have tips on branding and marketing for your program. So now that I've set you up, what's the best way our listeners can get a hold of Jen Siess?
Couple ways actually. So on the mindset portion, although you can any way you contact me is no problem. On the mindset portion, the program is called Mine to Define, MINE, Mine to Define. And so that is Mine to Define on all the socials. Pretty easy to look up: Facebook, Twitter. My email is Jen at mindtodefine.com. On the Soccer Mom Sunday podcast side, which we often talk about things besides just not just soccer moms. We've talked to national women's team players. We've talked to hockey moms. We've talked to other ones, former players, former coaches, D1 to pro teams. And men as well. We talked to men as well, focusing on the women's game, but we have male coaches as well. Come on, and dads. That one's called Soccer Mom Sunday. And just how it sounds, Soccer Mom Sunday, and the direct messaging is there through all the social media. And I would be happy to. We are always looking for guests, Jake. So maybe I'll have you on sometime.
I was going to say, boy, I haven't been asked to be on because I
Get
guess I'm not a
ready,
soccer
get
mom.
ready.
Oh. Jen, always a great time with you. Hopefully our paths will cross. We've gone west and stopped and we had dinner with you. You've come south with your whole family. We had lunch
That's
in
right.
Disney. So hopefully our paths will cross soon. Thanks again for sharing with our listeners, and all the best moving forward with St. Louis City and with Mind to Define.
Thank you. Always happy to be on.
For listeners, we want to say thanks to you and remind you that we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this segment every week, and just about every day we try to share stories and best practices for coaches, athletic directors, and leaders. So come back next time on the Educational AD Podcast. Always a great time with Jen Siess. Make sure you check out Soccer Mom Sundays. They're on Twitter. Also, Mine, MINE, Mine to Define, her mental performance program. Before we go, we want to thank all of our sponsors, including K12 Sports Tech, the name sponsor for Wednesday Wisdom. Go to K12sportstech.com. Join their AD think tank. Help shape how vendors work with athletic directors. We want to thank the rest of our sponsors: Gipper, Huddle, Hometown Ticketing, Home Campus, Sideline Interactive Indoor Score Tables, Snap, Raise, Vital Signs Wall of Fame, touchscreen video consoles, Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack, and the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration. Check out all these great sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.